All right, and we're back.
Hi, everybody. And,
Hi, everyone.
Hi, Presbytera.
I'm back, too.
You're back, too. I think it's been a while since you've been here, right?
Yeah, I think over a month.
Over a month? Wow, okay. Out of practice now. So we're going to bring you back up to speed now, right?
I think she'll be bringing you up to speed.
Bring me up to speed. So
I'll do my best.
We had a good time in Scotland. It was relaxing. There is nothing better than being on the back deck of the house, sipping some whiskey, and having a nice barbecue steak and seeing the Highlands in the background, right?
Right.
That's
heaven.
This
year we've added to our Scottish
portfolio,
our Scottish bar.
Yeah, we went and had the Bothy experience, right?
Well, that's the name of the company, the Gin Bothy Experience. Yes.
But Scottish gin is not regular gin like a Beefeater's or something you're used to. It's really very different. And we got gunshot, we got the cinnamon, and we got
not cinnamon. We got gunshot, which I think it's the color is why they call it gunshot. We got rhubarb, and we got gingerbread. Gingerbread.
Very, very good. So that was a little foray off of the whiskey trail. So anyway, we are back. I'm going to read something here, and it's going to be kind of my intro because I know this is very, very late for 4th of July, but I think that this is a theme that needs to be pursued, especially in the climate that we have today. So I'm going to read this, and I'm going to see if our listeners can recognize where I'm reading this from. We hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal, that they are endowed by their Creator with certain unalienable rights, that among these are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, that to secure these rights, governments are instituted among men and derive their just powers from the consent of the governed. Okay? That whatever any form of government becomes destructive to these ends, it is the right of the people to alter or abolish it and institute a new government. All right? So, any idea where that comes from?
I feel like this is a trick question. So
no, it's pretty simple. It's pretty simple, and in the opening paragraph of, and everybody knows the Declaration of Independence, the founding fathers say that when it becomes in the course of human event necessary for one people to dissolve the bands, the separate and equal station to which the laws of nature and of nature's God entitle them. Okay, so in here, what do we have? So the founding fathers have said, all right, that there exists a law of nature and that God is the supreme creator and that he has endowed us with unalienable rights. And that the government then is responsible to secure those rights. Okay, so reason for us, and this has a very Orthodox tinge to it. Everybody's wondering, where am I going with this? All right, so there is a really interesting book that's been published, and I think Demos is going to put it up for us right now, and it is the
America on Trial: A Defense of the Founding.
Thank you.
Larry P. Arnn.
And what he does is he takes us on this journey from Martin Luther all the way up through now the founding fathers and shows the development of some of the issues that we're having today. Now, and I'm not going to take too long here, but I'm going to read now another quote from the book, and this is from an educational reformer, John Dewey, and this was during Wilson's time. All right.
John Dewey, was he a politician?
No,
Dewey. Oh, Eisenhower and Dewey.
Eisenhower and Dewey.
Okay.
That was another.
I did make one error. The foreword was by Larry. The book was written by Robert R. Riley.
That's it.
Triple
okay.
R.
Triple R. And so in the 20s now, Dewey claims now that the founders appealed to transcendent truths. That's right, okay? But This blinded the eyes of liberals to the fact, now liberals of the 20s, the fact that their own special interpretations of liberty, individuality were themselves historically conditioned and relative only to their time. The founding fathers put forth their ideas as immutable truths that are good at their time and place, and that they had no idea of historic relativity in either general or application. So what Dewey is saying in that time is he's saying that the founding fathers, when they wrote that applied to them at their time. And that's not, that concept of truth needs to be replaced by what's called the concept of progress. And this was happening in the 20s. And so this is now, at least for Orthodox, this is what's happening to us now, is that these rights now, this pursuit of life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness now, is understood on an individual basis. So God no longer is the source of mortality. There is no absolute truth. History now conditions us that truth is relative, and that no longer is God responsible for that, but that I, as the self-individual, endowed by my inalienable rights, can decide for myself what is truth. And so it's very interesting to point out that this is not a new phenomenon, but we have to recognize now that the founding fathers, and many of them who were not necessarily full Christians, right? They were deists, many of them were deists, but they understood the underlying principle of an absolute truth. And that can't be more orthodox. That knowing that and understanding that there is an absolute truth. And that's what I see happening now, is that we're losing that concept of absolute truth, and we have been conditioned over history. So anyway, I just thought, very, very interesting book looking at our country specifically and what the founding fathers intended and now what's happened historically. So anyway, that's my little intro there.
Is this a new book?
I didn't think it was necessarily it's new like to the 2000s or something like that. So it's not like 1980s or 1990s. I mean, this is in the 2000s. I'm not. Demos is looking it up as we speak. So anyway, that's it. Time to get to questions. I've already killed too much time, but I wanted to make a 4th of July stance.
All right.
Or a pre-Labor Day stance.
Or pre-Labor Day stance. Okay, there we go.
All right. First up, Miggs says, some believe she is referring to peace between Russia and Ukraine. Could a meeting between Pope Francis and Patriarch Kirill foster that type of development? Could it encourage communion with all of Orthodoxy?
The only thing I'm a little bit confused about is the she.
It doesn't say.
It could be a typo, but it could be also.
He doesn't say who the she is that he's referring to.
But I certainly can make a commentary. Our own Patriarch Bartholomew has had good relations with the Catholic Church in both Cardinal Ratzinger, who is obviously Pope Benedict or was Pope Benedict, and now Pope Francis. So. And we have had, and contrary to what people think, we have had many good outcomes out of that are starting to bring our two churches back to what Christ commanded. So I am fully supportive of the idea that certainly not only, I understand the difficulties with our patriarch and the Patriarchate of Moscow. I understand those difficulties, but I think Francis as a mediator, I think that could produce very good results, acting as a mediator between the two of us. Absolutely. Okay. And again, our goal always being a peaceful resolution.
Right. Okay. Interpol asks, yes, that's what it says.
Interpol.
When are sometimes appropriate to sign the cross outside of the church / when at home?
Okay. Outside the home, those are pretty self-evident. Typically, if you are passing by another church, and again, I don't make distinctions. I won't cross myself in front of a Protestant church, but I'll cross myself in front of. I don't make those kind of distinctions. So if you do pass a church, it's a good idea to make the sign of the cross because, again, the Holy Spirit abides there. All right, regardless of the church, where 2 or 3 are gathered in my name, I am there among them. All right. Some people will also do their cross when they pass a cemetery. Again, nothing wrong with that. All of the fathers, especially St. John Chrysostom, has said that it is never inappropriate for us not to do the cross because, again, as St. Paul said, we should pray not incessantly. We should pray constantly. We should constantly be in prayer, and one of the ways to be in prayer, the simplest way to be in prayer, is to do the sign of the cross. Now, that's the outside. Did he also mention or
at home?
Well, okay. Certainly at home before every meal. Okay, to give thanks to God who provided the means for us to have the meal, and also the ability to grow those things that we are consuming, whether they're plants or animals or anything like that. So that's the first part. It's also appropriate to make the sign of the cross when you wake up, to thank God for the fact that you woke up, and then also making the sign of the cross before you go to bed, so that if your soul departs, that just like the fool who built the barns, right? Jesus comes like a thief in the night. So those are other appropriate times to make the sign of the cross.
I wanted to quickly share a comment from during our vacation from Pixie Dust 72 on our How to Make the Sign of the Cross video.
Oh, okay.
51 years I've been making the sign of the cross, but never knew the proper way or meaning behind it. Also, I was holding my fingers incorrectly. So thank you for this. And I think that's indicative of something that I've seen in Orthodoxy, but I've seen across many other traditions, where the older that you get, the more terrified you are of asking questions, lest you be viewed as foolish or this or that.
How can you not know that, right?
Exactly. So what are some of the best ways to approach that? From a perspective of the priest or from a perspective of the parish?
Oh, the easiest way to do that is the way that most of my parishioners do it. They'll have their kids ask me the question. Ask, you had a question for Father, go ahead and ask him, right? And then they'll say, I didn't realize that. Okay. So the easiest way is use your kid, all right? Next to that, a lot of times you can just do that in confession. You don't want to do it in public in front of everybody. You can do it in confession. Other times, I've got I'll sit down at a restaurant, and the owner will come by, and we'll kind of sit down and we'll get to talking, and then all of a sudden you'll hear the famous, whether it's Greek or English, Pater nasa soroti sokati. So let me ask you something, and then I know a question is coming. So once the people know that you're not going to make fun of them, then man, those questions come just rapid fire. So that's the quickest way. They gotta know you, and they gotta trust you.
And your book was published in 2020. So
so it is, yes,
fairly
fairly recent then. So.
And I was just going to throw in when I hear an ambulance, I like to do the cross.
That's a good point. That's a good point too.
Yes.
So now, hopefully, I'm becoming famous for giving it the moniker of the Jimi Hendrix cross.
It's kind of funny that I've heard that from a lot of people.
Because there's a lot of people out there doing the Jimi Hendrix cross.
Do you want to explain what that means for those that don't know? Yes.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
So, so the fathers tell us that making the sign of the cross should be a deliberate action. So you should be considering what it is that you're doing and understanding, that I have him in my mind, there's reason. I have him in my heart, which is the center. And then I carry that burden on my shoulders, and that he is there also to carry the burden. But a lot of times when you see people come up, you'll see them do this. And it looks like they're playing a guitar. So I call it the Jimi Hendrix cross, because they're not thinking about what they're doing, and they're really doing the cross injustice.
And it kind of helped when I edited you playing Jimi Hendrix
with the shades on, right? Oh yeah.
And Miggs comments that he likes to make the cross when driving by a Catholic or Orthodox church, and whenever he hears someone saying something blasphemous or sacrilegious.
I never thought of that. Wow. So pray for that individual to be enlightened. So Miggs, I like that. That is it's a great idea.
If I can summarize, there were a couple of comments on one of our earlier videos. I'm just going to summarize them in one way, and I kind of wanted to address it with you, because we just talked about the Jimi Hendrix joke that we made on that video, something that was very funny and people remember it, and we felt that was a great way to get the point across in a memorable, astute way.
Right.
Now, one of the common threads that I've seen is debate about whether laughter belongs in a church setting or church teaching, and some people saying that it's a bad thing. Some people saying that it makes us human. You one time said that one of your favorite icons was one of Jesus laughing.
Right.
Could you expand on that? Like,
it's not a bona fide icon. It's not like an icon like something that that you see
you hang in the church.
That you hang in the church, right? It's more art.
But what is the Orthodox perspective on humor and or even using it as either a teaching tool, or does it even belong at all in the church?
Well, it is part of who we are. I mean, it is the makeup of the human being that to express emotion. Now, the deepest and the most important emotion, obviously, is going to be
love.
Oh, okay. See, all right.
Oh, I got it right.
Yeah, it's going to be love. But all of our other emotions make us human, and laughter is certainly part of that. Okay. Now, I realize that we don't have a distinct example of Jesus laughing in the laughing or even smiling in the New Testament, but we have to imagine that Jesus enjoyed himself at the wedding of Cana. I can't believe that Jesus was sitting there like this and saying, no, I think Jesus was enjoying himself. So there's some extrapolation that we can do there. And Jesus, and many times Jesus was satirical. He had satire. How much longer do I have to endure you guys? I mean, there's a little bit of a biting of a sarcasm in there, and there's some extent of humor there. And many times when I've visited the monasteries, the monks love telling jokes. I mean, they're very happy. They're smiling all the time, and so I don't see outright like laughter, giggling, but I just see them joyful. They're happy, all right? So I don't see sad monks. So they come, sit down, enjoy, they'll tell a joke or something like that. So I've seen it as part of an Orthodox life in a monastic sense. And if it's good in the monastery, then it's good for us.
Can you have love or joy without laughter and smile?
I don't know how you can. Equally so, many times anger comes out of love. We discipline our children because they've done something that we know is dangerous, and we discipline them out of love, and we get angry. So, both humor and anger come out of, our deep love.
But that is, I don't think that anger or hate is necessarily the opposite of love. I think it's...
Yeah, anger and not hate. Hate, but anger.
But generally speaking, the opposite of love is to be without love, which I think is almost a definition of what hell is. Metaphorically.
I could. Right. I mean, St. John tells us that God is love, right? And in the absence of that, right? Okay, so it's us removing ourselves from God's love, right?
And I was just going to say that in the Bible, the children were going up to Christ. And I don't think they would be going up to somebody that wasn't
scary.
No, it's scary. I think they went up because he showed love, and he was. I'm assuming that he had a smile on his face when he saw the children. So
I would, absolutely. I mean, again, we can't just literally say just because it's not written in the Bible does not mean that Jesus did not smile or that Jesus did not laugh. I don't think that, because that doesn't make him fully human then.
I would feel much better going up to Jesus than Elisha, as a child. You know what happened with those bears.
Oh, yeah.
So we have a super chat from Tommy Williams.
Hey.
And, I don't know how to pronounce the one word. What is the Orthodox position on formula of Hormisdas? Hormisdas? Do you know what that is? I'm sorry, I don't know how to say it.
Formula of Hormisdas. Wow. Okay. Oof.
Well, I'll look it up while you move on to the next one.
We'll go on and
Okay.
but that's definitely a new one.
Yeah, that's a new one for me.
Of course, So our next question comes from Famicom Mike, and he asks: Is the Eastern Orthodox Church in communion with the Assyrian Church of the East?
I believe that the Assyrians are still, I believe that they are monophysites. So I don't think that we are in full communion with the Assyrian Church. And again, if it's anything, I believe that it is because of the original monophysite controversy. I'd have to verify that, but that's what my initial thinking is.
All right. Then Nicholas asks, is there a long process to becoming an Orthodox monk?
Yes, it lasts your entire life. Okay, now backing away from that, there's humor, right? Okay. So there is certainly a trial period. Diakonesis, where you are in a trial period. So what the abbot is trying to find out is, are you using the monastery to escape life? Is it just an escape? You've got too much stress in your life. You're abandoning the world. If it's just an escape, then those trials will then weed you out from the monastery. Typically, that trial will last anywhere from 1 to 2 years. So you'll normally not be tantraed a monk before, like I said, before usually 2 years, because they have that trial period to see if that life is right for you. So the monastery is not some place where they lock you up and you can't get out. In fact, they really, I don't want to say actively make every effort to exclude you, but they really want to test you and find out what are your true motivations for. Is it a calling or is it an escape? And
is the trial period, does it vary person to person?
It can, depending upon how the abbot feels. It can vary from person to person. I've seen situations where the candidate doesn't last more than a couple of months, and then I've seen situations where they last a little bit over a couple of years.
So what's their first step? If, in case they're asking for themselves, what is the first thing you decided that, yes, I've been called to be a monk? What's the first thing you do?
Go visit the monastery. But, go to the place that you think that you've been called to. And then usually at the monastery, there will be a spiritual father there, and that you can talk to that spiritual father, whether it's under the veil of confession or just to sit down at a meal or have a coffee with them, and you can discuss that. So the first thing to do is go and visit the monastery and talk to either the abbot or one of the spiritual fathers that's there.
Okay. So the formula of hormesis is what settled the first schism between the East and West, and this was done in during the time of Constantinople in 519 AD.
Okay.
So it is a little bit more complicated than I can summarize real quick. So I would recommend, Tommy, we'll do a little bit more research into it and give you an exact answer next week.
All right.
Write that down.
Okay.
I already have
the producer already has this information.
Right.
I love this is one of the reasons I love doing the show is learning something.
Yeah, like I said, I just
you probably know it. Once you take a look at it, you'll know what I'm talking about.
Yeah, it's one of those things I probably we had it in seminary and now it's just fled my mind here.
Love World Music says, welcome back.
It's nice to be back. And it's nice to be back on the show, right? I mean, I really miss this,
Sure. Tyler asks, what is the ideal mindset to have for the sections of the morning and evening prayers that are repetitive? I think of my children and wife for few each to make 12. What's the target mindset to have?
Well, many of the spiritual fathers and especially when you look at the Philokalia or you look at the Way of the Pilgrim, you'll find in there that they talk about spiritual ascesis or spiritual exercise. And here's where we want to definitely translate it as exercise, meaning that you have to build yourself up. You don't go into a gym and start weightlifting 250 pounds, okay, because you're going to get depressed, right, because you can't do it. All right, so you start small, okay? So don't take on too many prayers, because then, as Christ says, you become like the Pharisees, because they want to be known for their long beards and for their long prayers. All right, so you don't want to be like that. All right, so what you want is to take on what it is that can fit in the time that you've allotted. So maybe that time is going to be 3 minutes. And then a week later, it'll be 5 minutes. And then a month later, it may be 10 minutes. All right. So my recommendation, which is taken again from the fathers, is take your time and bite this off in small chunks. Like I said, 1 to 2 minutes. Maybe it's just going to be the 50th Psalm that you're going to say. And then you can work your way up to a compline after a couple of months or something like that. So pick something that speaks to you. Pick a prayer that actually has meaning for you. And normally speaking, the 50th Psalm has some elements that will appeal to everybody because it is the ultimate prayer of repentance and forgiveness. But there's many, many prayers within the Orthodox faith that you can use. Again, there's nothing wrong with Catholic prayers either. Let's not get into this whole I only pray Orthodox prayers. Okay, God hears all prayers. So again, find a prayer that speaks to you, because then it can come from the heart, as opposed to just reciting it without really knowing what you're saying or having any depth of feeling.
In reference to the first question we had, the she being referred to was the Theotokos by Miggs. Apparently we missed the first part of the question. Sometimes they disappear on us.
Okay.
In fact, right now, I most of the early comments disappeared on me. So that kind of stuff happens once in a while. So Miggs, if you can repost that first part of the question, we'll try to get you a more accurate answer.
All right. Sounds good.
All right. And then Seb says, "Hi, Father Maggos. Have you been to Toronto, Canada, to any Greek Orthodox churches? If so, do you remember what churches you visited while there?"
Oh. So, the answer to that is before I was ordained, I had a client that was in Scarborough. And so I would regularly go to meetings with that client. So I was regularly in Greektown. I was regularly in Chinatown. I was I was in Little Italy. I mean, I just love downtown Toronto. However, I did not get a chance to visit the churches in Toronto. So we have a lot of parishioners here who have family that is still in Toronto. So one of the things I'd like to do is to maybe go with them or one of our listeners who maybe is going to that church and make a road trip out there to one of those churches. So no, I have not been. I've been to Toronto certainly and enjoyed the nightlife there and the ethnic villages that are there. But unfortunately, I have not had a chance to visit the churches in Toronto.
And Windsor has a lot of Orthodox churches. I forget what the one street. I think it's along the St. Clair River maybe. But there was just all kinds of Orthodox churches, if I remember right. Yeah.
There was several in Windsor. That's when I had the parish in Flint, and our parish council president was a Canadian citizen, and so we would go with him, and we go to the festival there in Windsor at one of their churches there. But no, not in Toronto. So hey, that's something that maybe one of our listeners will extend to us.
Sure.
What's one of the most unique locations that you've ever encountered and visited an Orthodox church in?
Oh, I think the most for an Orthodox church, I think the most unique location for me was Korea. Korea. To hear Orthodox hymns sung in an Asian language was very, very beautiful. I mean, it had a whole different tonality to it. It was recognizable, but it's just the tonality is different. And it was just very different when you've grown up only with Greeks in the Greek Orthodox Church, and now to see that Orthodoxy is truly a worldwide faith, I thought was a very beautiful thing. So that's the most
Was
unique.
the architecture unique in any way, or was it very similar?
Nope, it was similar. It's just like I said, when he opened up the gospel, it had Korean on one side and then and Greek on the other. That was kind of cool. So.
Were they wearing those Chinese vestments with the dragons?
They were not. The both the priest and the bishop there were from Greece, so they were Greek.
Oh,
so
Well, and a unique, I guess you could say, Orthodox church was the one in Denver, where usually you have a church with a dome, and the church was a dome. If I remember right, I mean it's been so long, but that was pretty interesting.
Yeah, it's just literally a dome. So if you take an Orthodox church and you cut off the top and then you just lay it on the ground, that's the Church of Denver. That was a very unique church. Yes, wow. Absolutely.
Yeah, and one on my bucket list is designed by Frank Lloyd Wright. I think it's Wisconsin. Oh my gosh, it's somewhere up Wisconsin. I could be wrong about the state, but it's somewhere in that Wisconsin, Minnesota, something. It's designed by Frank Lloyd Wright.
Well, St. George in Bloomfield Hills, where we went for many years, wasn't that a Frank Lloyd Wright church also?
One of his students.
One of his students. Okay, all right.
Yes. So, yes. But so, kind of.
And of course, we would be remiss without the chapel at St. Augustine. That is a very unique church, too.
Yeah,
very, very unique.
St. Photios Shrine.
St. Photios Shrine. Yeah. It's very, very beautiful.
Yes. And speaking of Michigan, Sadie Joint says hello. Hi, Sadie.
Sadie, hello. How we
Sadie
doing?
From our previous parish. So next up is Dionysia, who says, good evening. Thank you for the show. Sometimes it's difficult to accept God's will. How can we accept something that we cannot change or even try to fix? Thank you.
Well, so trust and faith go hand in hand, because we cannot, and the fathers do tell us that, and many Protestant theologians as well tell us that the idea of trying to prove the existence of God through only reason is a fool's errand. All right. So faith, in its rawest form, is a trust in something that we cannot understand. For God is unknowable. All right. He is knowable through his energies, but he is not knowable in his essence. All right. So we have to trust that what God wills is in our best interests. But a lot of times we are clouded by our own judgment, and I've personally witnessed that myself in my life. There are things that I thought, according to my will, were the correct thing to do, but then my life went a different way. And then in Revelation, I was able to see that it was God's will that prevailed, which I allowed to prevail, not understanding what it was, but I had the opportunity and the grace to be able to see it in Revelation. So, what's that?
Sorry, never mind. Well, you said you allowed God's will to prevail. I think that's...
I mean, free will, right? That's what I meant.
Okay, I just wanted to clarify.
Yeah, okay, yeah. It's not like, okay, God, you're good with me. So
you get one show on YouTube that people watch, and it goes straight to your head, man.
That's it. All right, God, it's okay. So, but I accepted God's...
There we go. That's much better than allowing it. Because I heard some thunder rumbling up there.
That's right. But again, trust and faith, like I said, go hand in hand. And it is a very difficult thing sometimes to put our trust in something that we haven't seen, or we don't know, and that then is faith.
Okay. All right. We have a super chat from Tommy Williams, who asks, did early Orthodox churches have statues before the iconoclasm?
Actually, there were. So my understanding is, yes, that some Byzantine art, that there were statues. But I think that's very, very early on. I don't think that the idea of statues, I don't think went past even the 2nd century. Maybe somewhat into the 2nd century, just because that was the practice of the Romans, right? And so I mean, you do what you do what you know. But that slowly, as Constantine now moves and creates the Byzantine Empire, that falls away, and then art,
Iconography.
I thank you. Iconography then takes over.
It's a lot of syllables.
Right, and mosaics was our historical tradition too, and again that came from the Romans, right? So because mosaics were used, and so this is what they had, and so they would then paint mosaics also. I mean, create mosaics,
which we have here.
Yes, which we have in our church. Absolutely.
Is there any limitation to bringing that back in some form?
Other than the fact that it's just not our tradition, I mean, there's nothing wrong with a statue. I mean, but it's very difficult many times to overcome the inertia of tradition.
It would be. I mean, they're beautiful in a Catholic church. I have nothing against them, but it would be very strange for me to see in an Orthodox church.
Right. But what's interesting is many times in the Catholic churches that I've gone to, I see icons. So they are absorbing, I shouldn't say absorbing, they are
adopting?
Adopting, thank you. They are adopting now that Byzantine tradition in their churches. And the Episcopal Church that's right across the street from us, when I went and visited Father Robert that we had on the show, I saw that he had some icons also. So I think it's maybe easier for them to adopt it. I think it's a little bit difficult for us to adopt that the statue. I think it would be.
Do you think that if we had more statues in the Orthodox Church, that and I know there have been a lot of questions and hoaxes about this, but would the weeping statue be more of a thing in Orthodoxy? Would we encounter that more in a legitimate form, possibly, if we were to embrace that tradition?
I don't think so. I think the idea of whether it's a weeping icon or a weeping statue, I think again those are all miracles that are enacted by God as to help aid us in our faith. So I think it's irregardless of a statue or an icon. I don't think it would matter.
Right. And the church in England, whenever we see the royal goings-ons, we always see an icon in there.
Yes.
And the who was it? Went to the coronation, was it?
At the coronation, wasn't there an icon?
There were monks there too that took part in the.
Oh, right. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
But I think that there was an icon that was up near the altar.
Oh, it's always there. That one's always.
Oh, that one is always okay.
Mm-hmm. Yes. All right. So Seb asks, what are your thoughts on the NIV version of the Bible? I'm currently reading it as an Orthodox Christian.
I personally, next to the Orthodox Study Bible, the full Old and New Testament version of the Orthodox Study Bible, I like the NIV. I think the NIV does the Greek credit. I am not for literal translations because the English is very uncomfortable. It doesn't flow right. You can argue that this is the exact translation of the word, but I think what NIV does, at least that I've seen, in most cases, not in every case, but in most cases, it translates what is the essence of the message in a very, very in a very
it's not as flowery.
not as flowery, but in a very clean manner that is understandable, and that's what I like about. So you could argue in NIV this is not the exact translation of the word, but what it does is it provides a very, very nice feel to the flow of the English, so that it gives the essence of the meaning of what's trying to be conveyed.
And Miggs, it jumps in and says, I think the word you were looking for is embracing Byzantine tradition.
Embracing. Thank you. Embracing. I like that. Very good.
He also comes in and has reposted the question from earlier that was missed. and I'll just ask it real quick. Any thoughts about the rumors of Pope Francis and Patriarch Kirill having a meeting? There are Marian prophecies (parentheses if you believe) and parentheses that she'll ask for a consecration of Russia. Would such a meeting foster peace talks between Russia and Ukraine, Our Lady of Fatima?
So, and as I mentioned before, I absolutely believe that Pope Francis could act as a very good mediator for not only the situation between the Ukraine and Russia, but also between us, the Patriarch of Constantinople, and then also the Patriarchate of Moscow. So I think he can. I think he can help guide and steer those negotiations. I'm not saying he's going to solve it, but I think that he would operate as a very good mediator. Now, is that part of a Marian prophecy? No, I don't think so, because I think that it has always been in the recent popes, and I'm talking about Pope John Paul, I'm talking about Benedict, and now Francis, that their aim has been to look for the reunification of the churches, to reestablish the one holy Catholic and Apostolic Church. So I think that their motivation has been very pure, to bring the churches together. So in that sense, I don't think that that's necessarily a fulfillment of a Marian prophecy. That is just something that the head of the church is commanded to do by Christ.
All right. And we have a welcome back from Leslie Lusma. I don't recognize, that seems to be a new name, but I've been gone a month, so maybe not. But
well,
thank you
Leslie,
for the welcome.
Thank you very much for the welcome back.
Yes. Aaron says, missed you all. First question, Father, I think you might have touched on this. Can the devil and the demons physically harm us?
I like this question.
So the answer is no. They do have many powers, but they do not have the power to harm us. Now, again, we've been given this idea through movies like The Exorcist and Satan's Seed, and a lot of these movies and the one with William Shatner?
Oh,
the Devil's Reign. I forget the name.
Yeah, Devil's Reign.
Devil's
Reign.
John Travolta was in that too.
Yeah, John Travolta was
terrible
one of the
movie. Great cast.
Yeah, great cast. Absolutely. So again, we're affected by TV religion. What the movies think is our Christian faith. So Jesus clearly showed that he is God, and that he is master of all. So when he strikes out the demons, they leave, and in fact, clearly they show a fear of who he is. So through that belief in Christ, we are also then given that power. When the demons can harm us is when we allow that, or if somebody allows themselves to be influenced by the demons and they physically harm us, okay, then that can happen. But the demons themselves, no.
Can they manipulate you into self-harm? Because one of the cliches is the scratches on the face, they end up scratching themselves, etc., etc.
Okay, so yes, they can influence us in that way, but they can't control our thoughts. They can't read our thoughts, but they know who we are. Just like knowing you, I don't know your thoughts, but I know what bugs you. So I can say certain things that'll get you riled up, and if you don't recognize what I'm doing, you're going to react to that, and that's what we see in the demons. We have to recognize when we're being attacked, and that's the first thing. And then the second thing is, and I hate to say it this way because it sounds kind of corny, but the Dr. Evil,
yeah,
right? The power of Christ compels you,
yeah,
right? Remember that he was sitting in the chair, right? He's doing, okay, so that through Christ we have already become victorious.
Okay. All right. Sandra Laganas, I believe, is how you say that, says Rabbi Manis Friedman, Jewish.
I would think so.
Believe
Rabbi.
we are in reincarnation, that if you haven't completed your mission, we return. Isn't that against our Orthodox belief?
Well, certainly, and and as far as I know, that reincarnation is not a Jewish belief either, a mainstream Jewish belief. So this could be another form of, I'm not saying Kabbalah or something like that, but it sounds like another form. So I was not aware of the Orthodox Jewish faith that believes in reincarnation. To answer then your question, no. Because each soul is united to a single body, that forms one union. And so there is nothing for us to get better at. You know, we are made in the image and likeness of God, ergo we are perfect as soul and body. But we have been darkened through sin, and that's what needs to be removed. But there's nothing wrong with who we are. We're not going to get a better soul through reincarnation. We are perfect as we are, but darkened through sin.
Okay. All right. Brandon Rich has a question, but first he has two comments. I want to hear what you have to say. Brandon says, Jesus was God on earth. There is no way you would not know he was different. So there must have been, I'm assuming that means there must have been some way of knowing he was different, that people could sense that he was.
Well, and I wouldn't argue with that, because how many times in the Bible does it say they were amazed by his teachings, and then he did this and they were amazed? I mean, the Gospels are filled with people who just can't believe of what it is that he's done. So it is filled with examples where he shows himself to be something else, and especially the metamorphosis, right? That would, when the disciples saw that, they clearly understood this is not just man.
But before the metamorphosis, when he was walking around, would there have been some way just to look at him without knowing anything that he's done? If you just see him on the street, would there be a way to know that he was different?
I'm trying to think of a verse where it speaks of his countenance. In the hymns, it speaks of the countenance of Christ. In the countenance of your beauty. In fact, we heard it at the funeral service today. Mm-hmm. But I'm trying to think of a specific biblical verse that talks about Jesus's countenance.
I don't remember hearing anything.
I got it. Yeah, I got it.
Okay, I was just curious. But Brandon is asking, what is your view on ecumenism?
The vast majority of my priest friends call me the ecumeniac. All right, because I wholeheartedly believe that we must strive for what Christ commanded, which is one holy Catholic and Apostolic Church. All right, that. And apostolic means that we all have succeeded from the apostles. Okay, that we are truly a holy church, and that we are Katholikon, which means that we are a universal church. Okay, and so that we are not. And St. Paul warns us to avoid petty arguments and squabbles amongst yourselves. He told us to the Thessalonians. He told us to the Corinthians. He told Titus to be aware of this. And so we need to, so this is what we've been commanded to do. So we need to make every effort to regain the brotherhood that we once had. Now, where people get all bent out of shape is that, and I've pointed this out before in several articles, is this does not mean that we acquiesce elements of our Orthodox faith. What it means is that we engage in conversation and we engage in dialogue, where we look at what are, instead of arguing about our differences, what we do is we look at where we are the like. What is it that we have in common, and then work from that. But it does not mean that we sacrifice what are our Orthodox principles. So anybody now that fights against that is fighting against what Jesus commanded.
All right. Seb also asks, how many books does the Greek Orthodox Church have in the Bible? So how many books are in the Bible that we read?
Well, in the New Testament, it's the 24 books, right? The 24, and in the Old Testament, I always have to, just because.
It's trivia question.
Because we have the extra set of Maccabees. Well, here I'm just 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12.
In the
13,
Protestant
14,
Bible, you won't
15,
see the
16,
Maccabees
17,
in there at
18,
all,
19,
as
20.
far as I remember.
This is the best live stream ever. Watch a priest count.
25. Okay, so there's 25 here. There's 24 here. What is that?
49.
49. Okay, because we have second and third Maccabees, which I don't think is in there. We have the Wisdom of Solomon and Sirach, which I don't think is in the Protestant Bible. The Lamentations of Jeremiah and the Epistle of Jeremiah I don't think are in there. Let's see. Tobit is not in there, right? Tobit is an apocryphal book. So there's about 6 or 7 books that are not. I have that on
a list up right here,
and I have it in my catechism also.
Yeah, we have Esdras. We have that stands out. Odes, quite a few. I mean, but I'm very curious as to what is one of the why do we have some books and they don't have some books, etc., etc. What causes that? I mean,
did the Protestant did they cut out books, or did we add these books later on?
Like a good example would be so the Catholics have first and second Maccabees, okay, so they're already halfway there. We have 3 and 4. Why do we have 3 and 4? I mean, what does Catholicism recognize these as holy books, or is there something else that prevents them? Because for us, from Greek Orthodoxy, the perspective is if it's meaningful to salvation, and correct me if I'm wrong, if it's meaningful to salvation, it's there.
I would use that definition for definitely for the New Testament, and that's how some of those apocryphal books, like the Proto-Evangelion of James, which talks about the early life of the Theotokos, the childhood stories of the Book of Thomas. Those because the authorship is unclear and that they don't provide any information that helps us towards our salvation, we don't include those. We see those as apocryphal books. However, in the New Testament, in the Old Testament, remember, the Orthodox Church has never closed the canon on the Bible. The Protestant Church and the Catholic Church have closed the canon. So, technically speaking, the Orthodox Church has stated that the Holy Spirit can add books still to the there's a particular word, the writ of Scripture, or the contents of Scripture. So we as the Orthodox have not closed the canon. So that means it's open to allow for the Holy Spirit now to tell us. Now, we're not saying that we're going to start adding books to the Bible. I'm not saying that. But we have not closed that canon. So some of the books that are in here were added later. There was never an official published list through a council. St. Athanasius published a list. Jerome published a list. We had Irenaeus that published a list. But those lists were never codified and said by a council, this is the list of books. So some were always there, and then some were added later. Like the Maccabees give us information on the prayers that are efficacious for the dead, okay, which the Protestant Church generally rejects. In Tobit, we have that was the story about the angel, okay, and so there are morality tales in there that are educational for us. Remember, the Orthodox Church has the books that are salvific in nature, but they also have what is called theologumena, which are good for study and education. Not necessarily salvific, but help to explain certain aspects of our faith.
Does this seem to suggest that the Orthodox have the open-mindedness to believe that there's a chance that we may yet discover writings and books of the Bible from the time, like the Dead Sea Scrolls, for instance? I mean, as an example, we might discover something else.
Right.
Yeah.
So how would a book be added to the Bible today? Oh, it's a fly or something. How would a book be added? Say they found something and they said, we want this to be in the Bible. What is the step? What happens next?
Well, it would still have to meet the three criteria. And the three criteria are that it has to be either a first-person witness or a second-person witness. And then the idea of salvific, or it is, again, as I said, the theologumena, that is educational to help explain what are those salvific principles. So it'd have to start with those three.
Okay, so let's say that it meets that. Does it get brought up? Do all the bishops come together?
Yeah, so it would have, but a book could not be added until it was the universal church. It'd have to be all 5 patriarchates that would have to do that. So it could not happen until we were unified with Rome.
Okay.
Yeah, we as the Orthodox Church could not do that.
Okay.
Intriguing.
All right.
Well, there go my hopes for the Book of Demos, but
The books of the secret works of Demosthenes.
You never know. All right, let's see. I've lost my place. Oh, here we go. Beth, we have an email from Beth who says, "Greetings, Father Angelo. What do you think of the Mandela effect? Is this a phenomenon that the Church officially recognizes or believes that is possible?"
You're talking about Nelson Mandela?
Well, it is. That's where it gets its name from.
Well, what is the Mandela
I'll give
effect?
you an example that you will recognize. Okay. Mandela effect is the idea that something that people really remember in history has changed, and there are so few people that remember remnants of it. For instance, you're a big James Bond fan,
right?
You remember Moonraker.
Okay.
There's a scene where Jaws, the big guy with the huge teeth, he meets his
love.
His love, this tiny girl. Yeah. And she smiles, right? A lot of people remember her having braces.
Me too, I did.
But yes. she doesn't. I mean, there were reviews of the movie written at the time that said she had braces, but it doesn't exist in any.
I thought she did have braces.
Yeah, that is an example of the Mandela effect. You are misremembering history, and a lot of people think, well, this has to do. There are a lot of different theories as to why this occurs. Whether whether it's a different dimension, slipping in and out different dimension, etc., etc., etc.
I would just think that's I think that would be much more psychological or physiological. But it's the question: do we, as the Orthodox, believe that we can misinterpret?
Well, that do we believe that there is another force that creates the Mandela effect? That's my interpretation of the question, at least.
Well, I guess I wouldn't see the purpose of that. Why would God wish to deceive us?
Well, who says it's God deceiving us?
Well, okay. So yeah. I mean, if so I don't know if I could put it in the context of the Mandela effect, but I could certainly say that the Bible clearly states that the ultimate deceiver is Satan, and that disguised as the angel of light, he can convince us of many things that are not true.
That is an interesting perspective. If people start doubting history, then eventually logically that would increase a doubt in the history of the Bible.
Well, to some extent, that's the point that I was trying to make at the beginning of the show, is that
Historicity?
No, yeah, historism. So historism is the idea that history is relative and that it needs to be interpreted through the current lens, and that we can reinterpret it for our reasoning today. So that's kind of the point that the author was trying to make in the book, is once you are able to do that with history, then you can say that there is no such thing as an absolute truth, because absolute truth can't exist. It has to be relative, because each generation is going to view that history through their own lens. and that is applicable for them, and that is right for them. And that's not true.
I'm wondering if the Mandela effect is association, because in the scene, if I remember right, you know how great my memory is, when they meet, he smiles and then she smiles. He's got the big shiny teeth, and I think we just associate she would have a shiny smile. Oh, she must have braces.
It would be the most logical joke. I remember that too. It's and then there are other examples like Fruit of the Loom and the cornucopia behind that.
Oh, okay.
When you think of the Fruit of the Loom logo, do you imagine a basket behind the fruit?
Yeah, right.
It doesn't exist.
Oh.
There's no basket. It's just fruit.
Oh,
so
okay.
The question is, how can so many people remember this thing that never existed?
Yeah. Yeah, it's
remember
when you told me that, I'm like, she did have braces.
Okay, but like Terry said, I think that part of that is conditioning. Okay, when we see fruit, we expect to see a basket, and our mind can create that, can fill in that missing piece. Just like, she had pigtails and she looked like a little girl, so you would expect a little girl to have braces, right? Or like you said, the shiny. So our mind many times does fill in gaps that were never there.
Yeah. Okay, well, shall we move on?
All right.
Diane says Kalipanagia, and then I'm not sure what Kalo Veka Pentagusto?
Veka Pendagusto.
Pentagusto. What does that mean?
The 15th. Happy 15th.
Oh, for the Dormition.
The 15th of August. They throw the numbers and the month right in there.
Okay. And then Sandra.
Efkaristo Diane, que pisis.
Sandra asks, in Greece, do they use King James Bible or only the Septuagint?
It's a good question. Man,
I don't. Would they use the King James Bible?
No.
No.
I mean, I see no reason why they would use the King James Bible. Now, remember, the Septuagint is just the Old Testament. So more than likely, yes, I think that their source for the Old Testament would be from the Septuagint, okay, because that was the Greek translation. So that makes sense for them. But they would have their own translation of the, and I had it at one time, and I don't know where it is now, but...
Our first stand-up of the night, and it's 8:09. Wow.
I know, I didn't...
this is a record.
You see, maybe you're suffering from the Mandela effect. At one time you knew it was there.
I knew it. So for example, okay, so here we have I Kenidiathiki. So this is the Bible, or this is the New Testament, and if you can see on one, okay, on one side you can see this is the original Greek that you'd have in the code. And then on the other side, you'd see it written, in this case, the book is older, so it'd be written in Katharevusa, all right? So there's not really a source that they read like RSV or NIV or anything like that. All this is a translation of the actual Greek into a Katharevusa, and what a modern book like this would be just a translation into the modern Greek.
Diane is in with a super chat. And she says confirmation bias. I agree. I think that's the most...
Okay. All right. Yeah.
All right. And then Diane asks, how do you figure out what parts of the Old Testament are still acceptable in Eastern Orthodoxy? The New Covenant does not delete all that which preceded it, correct?
Yes, and Jesus Christ was very clear on that, and he says, not one iota, not one iota, which is the smallest letter of the Greek alphabet. Anybody that changes one iota of the law shall be, I'm paraphrasing here, shall be condemned. So, and all of the Holy Fathers, to include the apostles, specifically St. Paul, gives us the Old Testament as the foreshadowing of who Jesus Christ is. So the Bible is incomplete without Hebrew Scripture, because it shows us that Jesus. It helps to show us that Jesus is not just fully man, but he is fully God, who was prophesied by the Old Testament prophets, by the prophets of Israel. So in that sense, the completeness of who Jesus Christ is given to us in both Hebrew Scripture and in the New Testament. And what the Old Testament does for us is provides us that lens. Now, we use the Holy Fathers to help many times explain that lens for us.
Okay, all right. Costa says, hello, nice to see you all again.
Hello.
And David Braun asks, what are your thoughts?
What, is it John Costa?
No, Costa V.
Oh, Costa V, okay.
Yeah. David Braun asks, what are your thoughts on the translation of the New Testament by David Bentley Hart, published a few years ago by Yale University Press, if you have seen it?
I have not, David Bentley Hart. Is that another homework assignment?
I'll put it on the list, David. We'll get back to you on that one.
Well, so I wonder what...
And
everybody's got to translate it. Okay.
And Diane just comments that the Orthodox Jews don't even really push the idea of heaven, never mind reincarnation.
Oh, okay.
All right. And then we have one from, is it?
I have no idea how to pronounce that.
Lassius first. I'm sorry if I'm messing it up. Oh my goodness. This is a real test. With the discovery and dating of the Göbekli Tepe in Turkey.
Göbekli Tepe, I think. Yeah.
Tepe in Turkey dated to 9500 BC. How do creationists figure that works with their ideas?
It wouldn't.
That's
it's
another
12,000 years old. Over 12,000 years old.
Yeah, well, isn't there an argument going to be that carbon dating has a plus or minus factor that is,
Well, this particular site is one of much controversy because there is it predates what has for a long time been considered the beginning of human civilization.
Okay.
From purely a historical studies standpoint, this kind of rewrites what our understanding of ancient civilizations are. I don't see how a creationist would be able to square away with that without the carbon dating excuse that they use to explain away the flood and the dinosaurs and man living together with dinosaurs and stuff. I mean, I don't know.
But again, all of this is see, I haven't recovered from Scotland yet because all of a sudden I got this Scottish steak in my head. I was thinking of something and then all of a sudden this steak.
STEAK, not STAKE.
Not ST. Although remember when we were in Greece and we saw that sign that said beef steak and it is STAKE. Yeah. Okay. Shoot, where was I going?
That's actually a great. If you have a restaurant, try to sell steak on a steak. Steak. The question about creationism and Göbekli.
Oh well, yeah. And so again, as St. Paul says, we're getting into these discussions about whether the earth is or is not 6,000 years old. What Christ has commanded us to worry about and be watchful of is his return. Okay, so the test question when we get to heaven isn't going to be, is the earth 6,000 years old or not? That's not going to be the test question. The test question is, do you believe in me as King and God? That's going to be the question. So, as St. Paul says, we get distracted by these things when what is important for our salvation is to truly believe and to truly confess Jesus Christ as Lord and King who came to earth, died, buried, and rose for our salvation.
Yes, well said. Miggs comments, one of the things that inspires me about you is your view on ecumenism and believing that Jesus would want us to be one church, not separated by schism or reformation or any form of departation. Thank you.
Oh, thank you. Thank you.
And
okay.
then he goes on to say the only two books in the Orthodox Bible not in the Catholic Bible is Maccabees 3 and 4. I think you said that earlier, didn't you? You already covered that. Okay.
Tobit's in their book too? I didn't know if Tobit was in there. Tobit and then I thought Judith was so.
And then Diane says there is no consensus on the contents, existence, or substance of what is known in English as heaven in Judaism.
Oh, wow. That is interesting. So
we just got a there we done?
No, because I thought that I thought that that of the 12 principles of Maimonides, I saw that the belief in a bodily resurrection to heaven was one of the 12 I don't want to say commandments, that's not the right word, but one of the 12 beliefs of Judaism.
Oh, well, Diane would be the one
to
ask.
so that's why I was thinking heaven, because I thought that was one of Maimonides' 12 concepts of Judaism.
We should ask a rabbi about it. I get a direct answer.
Well, that's Peter Stein.
Yeah, we'll do that. We have a super chat from Le Commandant de Etat, which I hope I pronounced correctly. How do Orthodox view salvation? Is it faith alone or faith plus works?
So well,
I think you did a sermon about this recently.
Well, probably a couple of sermons on this. So we sometimes it is viewed too literally. So this idea that, and even Martin Luther said this also too, is that if you have true faith, then you will demonstrate it through your works. So even Luther agreed with that, all right? So what the Orthodox do not agree with is that works alone will save you. So people that say, I'm a good person, I do good things, that's not the whole part of getting into heaven. There has to be faith. As I just said, I have to confess that Jesus Christ is King and God. In fact, that's what we say at the that's what we say during the baptism when we ask the question to the sponsor. So, do you believe in him as King and God? That's the question that we ask. So, you have to have faith, but out of faith comes the desire out of love in the image of likeness of God, to do good works. So a Christian who says they have faith but does not show that faith through works, St. James tells us his faith is dead. And Luther, not liking that, called it the straw epistle, and he discounted it. But Orthodoxy takes all of the New Testament into consideration, but we do not believe that works save you. We believe that faith saves, but faith must be demonstrated by your works.
Right. Okay, and Martin Luther not agreeing with that book of the Bible, that's just his opinion.
That is his opinion. That's right. And unfortunately, Martin Luther, like Thomas Jefferson, rewrote certain parts. In fact, in Martin Luther's Bible, he added the word, "You are saved through faith alone." That is not in the text. He added that word.
I'm going to jump down for a second to Joe Jones, who comments that I believe the Ethiopian church claims to have the most books in the Bible.
Okay.
Then again, I mean, I'd rather not look. I'd rather grab the actual copies of the books. Because if you look at, if you going off of Wikipedia or anything,
Oh, yeah, right.
for
Yeah.
the show is not
Absolutely.
the proper way to do this.
Exactly. Right.
Right.
But I'd be very curious to see if that's the case. I have heard about that myself, but the Ethiopian had the most, but I'd like to check it out.
Yes.
Well, we have an Ethiopian church here. I can just say, let me see your Bible.
Yeah.
Yes.
Right?
So tonight is make Presbytera work really, really hard in pronouncing things. So Seb says, "Hi, Father. Have you read any other religious book like the Quran, or the Talmud, or the Guru Granth Sahib?"
Which sounds either Indian or Buddhist.
It does sound Indian, but what do I know?
So the only other religious reading that I have done to totally fess up is the Old Testament and then the Haftorah, which when I was in Flint, I was studying with one of the rabbis that was there. So I started studying in that, but no, I have not. Not that it's not on my my list to do. I have not studied the Quran, nor have I studied Buddhism intensely, right? And
This was,
or Hinduism.
The last book was Sikhism.
Sikhism. So so no, I have. It has been overwhelmingly difficult just to focus on all the Christian works that are available. So I got to kind of get that under my belt first, which is probably a lifetime's work.
Well, at one point we'll probably eventually do videos on those topics.
Yeah, I think what I really want to do is I would want to take a class on those. Yeah. I would not just want to sit down and read it, just as I would not expect a Muslim to sit down and just understand Christianity just by reading the book. I'd have to be guided by somebody, so I'd want to take a class.
Yeah, how many sermons have you done where you actually focus on the translation of the word, and how we've mistranslated this effect and that effect? Right?
Yeah, absolutely.
So just sitting down and reading a translation, you're not necessarily going to get the whole story
because you're subject to that person's idea of what the translation is.
So Diane has some interesting comments, but if we have time, I'll come back to those at the end. I'm gonna skip down right now to from Miggs, who says, "Can the Book of Enoch, which the Ethiopian Church believes it can one day be allowed in the Orthodox Bible, who decides that?"
Again, as we mentioned earlier, that would have to be the Synod of Bishops. That would have to be all 5 patriarchates together, and that would have to be decided by a ecumenical council.
I like Seb's next question.
Yes. Which Bible books do you read the most in your liturgies, and what Bible books do you read the least in the liturgies?
Well, we if we're talking New Testament, we read throughout the year. We read all of the New Testament except for the Book of Revelation. So that's an easy one. I would say for the Old Testament, you want to take a guess what is probably the most quoted from the Old Testament in our liturgy?
Psalms?
Oh, yeah, without a doubt. I mean, Psalms is just like way up there, and then all the rest are. And then probably the next one is going to be...
Genesis?
Nope.
Proverbs?
Nope.
No?
Isaiah.
Oh, of course.
Right, because of the prophecies of Isaiah.
Yeah.
So the prophets are the next most quoted one, and then I would say probably Genesis, and probably the least quoted I'd say would be the other 4 books of the Torah, right? And then like the other. Like Tobit and Judith, and we don't read a lot from the 4 kingdoms, right? 1 Samuel, 2 Samuel, then right, or the 1, 2, 3, the kingdoms. Okay. We don't read too much from those, but I'd say overall it have to be Psalms, Isaiah, and then after that it would be the major prophets, the minor prophets, and then Genesis.
Okay. All right. And we have another super chat from Le Commandant d'Etat. Will the Orthodox and Catholics come together in communion in the future, or is it too late?
And it's never too late. Until Jesus' second coming, there is always time, right? Come, the table is, as St. John Chrysostom says, come, even those of you at the 11th hour. So it's never too late.
And being Greek, we'll probably end up showing up at 11:15.
11:55.
Yeah, I would say 59.
No,
But
I was trying to be nice. See, we're Greek. We can make those jokes.
That's right. And it's humor. And it's right.
Yes. O Lord asks, what do you think about the Dewey Reams Bible?
Golly. Man, I'm getting hit with all
I
this
might
stuff
be
today.
pronouncing it wrong. So perhaps if you look at it, you might, maybe I'm saying it completely wrong. It sounds so familiar. I've seen
Dewey
that
Reams.
somewhere. I thought maybe you read it.
Let's let me look it up for you real quick as we move on to the next questions, because we have quite a few and only like 3 minutes.
All right.
Oh, wow.
So next up, Sandra asks, in North America, what Bible does the Greek Orthodox use?
In what?
In North America, what Bible does Greek Orthodoxy use?
Oh, RSV, Revised Standard Version.
Okay. All right. This is kind of a lightning round. So
Yeah,
Aaron's second question, how do we explain to non-Orthodox or non-Christians for that matter why we bless things and why we keep items which are blessed?
How do we explain to why we bless things?
And why we keep them things that are blessed?
These are things that we take for granted as Orthodox, but then when we're asked to explain them, we have to stop and we have to think about it, because we want to be careful that our answer is in a language that they're going to understand. Not that I'm saying they're stupid, but it's a language that we want to speak a language that they're going to understand. First off, we believe that everything is sacramental. So all acts and everything that we witness in nature, all of those things are sacramental. St. John Chrysostom talks about this, and some of the other fathers talk about this. So we start from a position that everything that we see is a creation of God. So that so by blessing it, we remember that these are not things created by us. They are obviously created by us. We take the wood and we fashion it and we paint it and we do so, but that we are in a synergy with God, in a synergia or a synergatia, meaning that we work together with God. But blessing it helps us recognize that everything in this life, A, is sacramental and belongs to God, and B, that God is the source of everything that we do. But we as human beings can participate in that creative process. Right? Now, so this is why we bless things, so that we can remember that everything does come from God. Why do we keep those items that are blessed? Because we believe that not they have any power in themselves to protect us, but it reminds us who is our ultimate protector, and that is the Father, Son, and Holy Spirit that provide us the will that we should follow, provide us the source of salvation to be with God, and then provide us the reason and the grace by which we can understand that will.
So the Dewey Reams Bible, it's a translation from the Latin Vulgate, and was written in the 1600s as a counter-Protestant Reformation. Yeah. Basically, it was written to uphold the Catholic tradition against the upcoming Protestant Reformation.
Okay.
But as far as our thoughts on it, I would probably recommend that we return to this question next week.
Yeah, I just had not heard of that. Wow. Okay.
I'm very curious that tonight it seems to be a theme about books in the Bible, different translations, and so forth. And I'm very curious as to what is what is spurring this particular topic, because I find this fascinating.
Now, remember, what I'm thinking is that the Orthodox didn't necessarily have a knowledge that the Douay-Rheims Bible existed, but they did have contact with the Protestant reformers. Melanchthon was probably the primary one who actually went. Luther never went, but his colleague Melanchthon, he went and he presented. He presented to the Patriarch of Constantinople at that time a treatise on what the reformers thought, and then he was looking for a response. And so what I can say is that the Orthodox Church in the 15 and 1600s did have contact with the reformers, but after serious study and evaluation, they determined that they were not that the Orthodox Church was not in agreement with what the reformers had talked about. So in that sense, I think that if the Orthodox had known about the Douay-Rheims Bible, and I'll have to verify that, they would have been in support of that, because they had rejected many of the reformers' principles, which were faith alone, that works doesn't count, reason has no standing, and that it's only through force of will that one comes through God. These are all items from the reformers that we, the Orthodox Church, rejected. And in fact, there's a famous document where the Orthodox Church rejects each one of these point by point. After that, there was a continuation by Melanchthon and some other reformers to try to influence the Orthodox, and the Orthodox in true Byzantine fashion, rather than argue. You want to guess what they did?
I don't know.
Nothing.
Oh.
They just don't answer the letter. Kind of like you write, the girlfriend or the boyfriend wants to keep having contact, and you write the Dear John letter or the Dear Jane letter, right? And then if they still contact you, you just break off communications.
It's called ghosting today.
What?
It's called ghosting.
Oh, ghosting.
Today.
And that's what the Orthodox Church did. They just stopped answering because they knew that it wasn't getting them anywhere.
Well, considering this, okay, with all the different translations of the Bible and so forth, is there a danger as a Christian to your own salvation if you ascribe to the wrong translation of the Bible? I'm not talking about like something that's been done nefariously, but if I grew up reading and believing the Catholic Bible, the Protestant Bible, or the Rheims Bible.
I think that with the exception of clearly modified Bibles like the Jefferson Bible that takes out the resurrection, or the Bible that Luther specifically wrote that he eliminated James and added some verbiage, accepting those, any of the standard Bibles that you read, RSV, NIV, ESV, Orthodox Study Bible, if you read those with proper guidance, your salvation is not going to be affected.
Okay. And we got one final question. O Lord asks, is Bartholomew trying to position himself as the Pope of all the Orthodox, like the Pope of Rome?
No. He is, but he is clearly claiming that he is the first among equals, without a doubt. And that is his proper title, is that he is first among equals. And what he is saying is that if there is a reunification with the Catholic Church, that he and the Pope relinquish his title of Pope and take his true title, which is Patriarch of Rome, then he will recede, and the Patriarch of Rome will become the first among equals. But his only title that Patriarch Bartholomew is claiming is to be first among equals.
Okay.
All right, great show tonight. I'm glad.
I'm glad to be
finally back.
We're finally back. It's really good to be back. There was still some of that return from Scotland fogginess, or return from overseas fogginess.
It took a whole week to get fully back.
But I'm really, really glad that everybody is back. I'm glad, Presidenta, that you're also here to correct all of my heresies. All right.
And to try to pronounce as much as you possibly can.
Yes.
You did a good job tonight.
That's right. We got a couple of homework assignments, but no, it's absolutely good to be back. I really and I'm sure that Demos and Terry, you really enjoy the dialogue that we have here and the great questions that we got. So stay tuned, and we're coming back.
Well, we'll be back on Sunday.
We'll be back on Sunday, and we'll be back on Thursday. In fact, next week I'm going to get my mom.
Yes, you are.
Oh,
yeah,
She'll be here this time next week.
That's right, because we're getting in Thursday just before the show.
Oh, beautiful. Is she going to be a special guest?
She's going to bring my mom on as a special guest. In fact, she's hearing this right now, and she's saying, I can see my mom.
She's saying, no, I'm not, but we're
no,
saying, yes, you are.
And if you're in Rochester in a little less than 2 weeks, we're kicking off the liturgical year with, of course, with the mission of the Theotokos, and we have a special event going on with that.
Yes.
You'd like to tell us?
Oh, yes. So what we're going to do, we're returning to the practice of having Vacation Bible School, Vacation Church School, whatever you'd like to call it. So one of the things that we're going to do that I think is really, really interesting is a lot of people do not know that there are the Engomia, or the Lamentations to the Theotokos. Everybody knows Holy Friday and Lamentations for Christ. A lot of people do not know that we also have a set of Lamentations that we sing to the Theotokos, and that there is an epitafio for the Theotokos. So to introduce that to our kids, what we're going to do is I have the icon of the Theotokos that I printed out on white paper. And what I'm going to have the kids do is I'm going to have the kids color it in and decorate it from the icon. And then they're going to process with that. And then we're going to sing an abbreviated form of the Lamentations. And then kind of talk about why do we do the Lamentations? What is the Assumption? What's the difference between Assumption and Dormition? And so we're going to have a retreat in the morning where we're going to have the service. Then we're going to have a little bit of an explanation. Then we're going to eat, and then we're going to do fun and games. So look, and we're going to live stream that.
We're going to live stream with the service.
That'll be on the 15th. Right.
Yes. Mm-hmm. We're very excited. The Sunday school teachers have put in a lot of work, and we're thrilled to start.
And I understand again that we'll also be doing the Vespers. We're live streaming the. Oh, we're not live streaming the Vespers. We're not live streaming the Vespers. Okay, fine. All right. So the night before we'll be doing the Vespers of the Assumption. Typically, that's where we would also do the Lamentations. But I want the kids to participate, so we're kind of moving it to the morning of the 15th. So stay tuned with that. That's going to be, for those of you that have not seen it, I think it's going to be very interesting and a lot of fun for the kids.
All right. Well, that said, I hope you all have a great night, and we'll be doing our homework.
And we'll be doing homework, and we'll see you Sunday. See you next Thursday. Yeah.
Yes.
Okay.
Thursday, yes.
All right.
Good night, everyone.
And sayonara.